All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is Sunday, July 21st, and we are live on both channels, Wrestling Revolution Keaton and NWF Wrestling. Keaton, how's it going, my friend?
Oh, all good. Can't wait for this one. This is going to be a great one.
Yeah, a great interview today. We have the Entertainer Chris Mercer coming on with us. And I'm going to point out all of our social media links. We kind of revised our channel a little bit, and you can see all of Keaton's social links, all of our social links. Just if you want to find out more about either one of us, you can always use any of these links. And
check us out.
And Keaton, I gotta say, before we bring Chris on, I know that you and your dad finally watched the NWF Kids Pro Wrestling: The Untold Story documentary I sent you.
Oh, it was brilliant.
Give me a. I mean, and pull no punches. You know, what'd you think?
Right. So what I liked about it was real. You know, when you were talking about you and Charlie Lane and stuff, and then you were telling absolute truth about Steve Angstrom, you didn't hold it back until and you know what I mean. Like, you were just honest about Steve Angstrom and all.
Yeah, you know, and that I gotta say though, Keaton, when I had Steve on as a guest, obviously we brought him on as a guest last year, right? And that's the first time I seen him ever since the days. And 20 years ago, I was a little more bitter about Steve, right, for what he did. And when I seen him last year, you know, and then he publicly apologized and everything, it was tough to hold that bitterness. You know, I've learned when you got older, you know, 20 years ago, I thought things a little differently. But when you get older, Keaton, I've come to realize that you only go around this world once. And, you know, if you're going to hold holding grudges is not the right way to go about it. You know what trying to say?
Yeah, I
So
get it.
when I did the documentary, I was a little holding a little bit of a grudge, and kind of look at it a little different now. But I meant what I said at the time.
Yeah, but at least you didn't lie about it or nothing. But I would
Yeah.
give it about a 8 out of 10 in my most honest opinion, an 8 out of 10, which is one of the best documentaries.
Well,
Like you done it really well.
I appreciate
Um,
that.
but there's one
Yeah.
thing I can say: the book was better than the DVD.
You like the book better?
Way more detailed, yeah.
Yeah, it does get into more deep. You're right. The book, it definitely elaborates more. I always thought of writing another edition and even go further, but
You
man,
should.
that's a lot of work writing a book. I don't know if I want to do that again. But yeah, so we got a great show. The entertainer Chris Mercer, and I know that you think real highly of him.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely one of my
yeah.
favorite local wrestlers of all time, to be honest.
So yeah, and he's of course with Northern Ireland Professional Wrestling, and so let's bring our guest in and let's get started. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Northern Ireland, the entertainer Chris Mercer. Welcome in, Chris.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Sean. Hopefully, I can live up to Keaton's accolade and the way he speaks to me. So, fingers crossed that today goes well. I'll do my best, Keaton. I'll do my best.
Well,
So,
yeah. I mean, from what I've seen, what I've watched is I'm going to silence this thing, you guys. Is you're pretty. I mean, you are the entertainer. I mean, from the videos I watched and everything, I can see where you've got that name. Very, very charismatic in the ring. Really good at promo work. Getting the crowd
definitely.
engaged, right, Keaton?
Oh yeah, definitely one of the NIPW's very best, to be honest.
Oh,
You know,
for sure.
even you didn't realize, Sean, you obviously weren't there that night, but if you were, you would realize, like, see the crowd from the very start to the very end. You would think, like, at the very end, the crowd would be, obviously they're tired and they want to go home and stuff, but once Chris Mercer came out, the crowd went absolutely crazy. That just shows how much of an entertainer Chris Mercer is.
Well, I believe we were talking earlier, Chris, 3 years now, right? That you've been involved?
Yeah, 3 years. So wrestling for two, officially on shows, but yeah, training for 3 years.
Well, they have 3 years of seeing you. So it's like, of course, you're going to build that rapport with the fans. And that's the beauty of this business, once you start getting seen over and over again. But yeah, I mean, I'm just fascinated with all you guys over there, and you know what I like about your organization. I've told you, Keaton, this before. I love that, kind of that raw, organic crowd that you guys get.
Oh yeah, definitely. But before Johnny McElroy came in, I think Johnny McElroy is kind of like uh, the unsung hero on the NIPW, because he got the fans going crazy. I don't think NIPW's ever got a crowd like that, so I think it's a lot to do with Johnny McElroy, the ring announcer, the way the crowd's been going on the
Well,
NIPW.
sure, but even before him, like when just listening to your stuff, and I can hear the crowd in the background of all the videos you've done over the time. It's a very it's real, and it's a
Yeah, you can
real
tell
fan base.
real
think,
professional wrestling fans.
I think one thing that we really, really pride ourselves on, and I've talked to a few that would be our sort of consistent regular attenders, it as you say, it is very, very organic. I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of, is the fact that the people that are sticking with us, it's kind of molded into its own wee sort of like subgenre within professional wrestling on the island. The market isn't huge, but it's almost like we have our own wee sort of niche that we've carved out.
Yeah.
And it is very, very organic. I've had the privilege of wrestling and being involved with a few promotions, but it just, even though it's a smaller crowd, it's the intensity and the energy. I absolutely adore it, and anytime I get a chance to be honest, it's the ones I look forward to the most.
So I do have a question. You're a baby face for the most part, right?
Well, actually, um, well, I would consider myself. I've always been a baby face. sometimes me and the audience kind of fall out from time to time. Me and Keaton have had our differences in the past as well, a few times. But I would say I have been able to work both sides of the spectrum.
Because that was what I was going to ask. Have you been a heel, and what do you prefer? You know.
Um, well, I think whenever I really enjoy the heel work, but I think sometimes I'm probably the most consistent role I've played is being sort of the anti-heel role, where it's that person that comes out and you want to hate him, you want to boo him, and you start booing him, but then you hear his music, and then you see his cheeky little smile, and then you kind of go, well, actually, do you know what? He's getting my blood boiling, but there's something that I just have to laugh at, or smile about. And I love doing that. You see, if I'm able to break someone and make them laugh, whilst also making them really angry with me, those sort of bait and switch moments are fantastic. There was one moment that I particularly really enjoyed, and again, me and Keaton have had our falling out previous shows, but I had basically managed to convince the audience that, without saying it, that they thought that I was going to leave professional wrestling. And then I played a video in which
Oh, yeah.
I ripped up Keaton's. Keaton had made me a poster, and I ripped up his poster, and it was probably just the energy the crowd gave after that. It was a very fun moment. Maybe not for Keaton, but for me certainly is.
Oh yeah.
I'm still sad about it to this day.
Anytime you do heel antics and you get the
Yeah.
reaction, that's what you're looking for, though.
But I gave him a T-shirt last night, so we should be all right.
So I just want to remind everybody watching that we are live. So if you have any questions for Chris or comments for any of us, just feel free to comment in, and I will bring them in as Keaton asks his questions. He's got questions lined up for Chris, and so because we are live on both channels, as you bring in any questions or comments, we will see them and we'll pull them in. So Keaton, I'm going to set the reins over to you and let you start with your line of questioning.
So tell us a bit about who is Chris Mercer.
Who is Chris Mercer? Well, I think what I really enjoy about professional wrestling is the ability to merge real life with entertainment. So for me, the thing I've always prided myself on is there's people that kind of they develop a character, but the character is completely separate to what they are. So they may put on a mask, or they may be like playing a certain character that might be a Viking, or might be it might be some sort of gimmick or some sort of sort of identity that is completely different to themselves. But for me, Chris Mercer in and out of the ring is pretty much the same person, but it is that sort of that dialed up slightly higher. It's all the things that I would like to be doing outside of the ring that I put into the ring. And I suppose is when you get into the ring, you've got that level of security to be able to raise the bar a wee bit and dial up to 100. But Chris Mercer, what you see in any of the shows is pretty much just me as a person. Probably, well, to a certain degree. The ironic thing is that outside of the ring, I would be more of a quiet person, and I would be less vocal, I would say, as much as I would be in the ring. But it pretty much is the same person. And the character is me. I've always wanted to be. I always loved making people feel something in terms of excitement and feeding off energy. I love doing school plays and things like that. I loved performing from very young, and giving people moments and being able to as I say, perform for people. So for me, that character has just always been me, and it is just basically the only difference is I'm maybe putting on a slightly sparklier jacket, or a pair of boots that I wouldn't usually wear in public, but it pretty much is the same person.
What do you do outside of professional wrestling?
So the majority of my work has been based in youth work. So my journey in terms of what I do for a day job is, whenever I done my A levels, which I don't know what your equivalent would be in America, Sean. Um, but whenever I done it was just before going off to university. I applied for youth work and events management, and I got rejected by both. So I didn't know what my journey was going to be, and then I ended up doing a foundation degree and then doing the full degree in event management. So I took a back step to go forward. So I done a degree in events management, and then I done events for a while. So I done like public, like big cultural events. So I worked on an event called Culture Night. It doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. But at the time that I did it, that was my first ever paid event job, and I was 19, doing event managing a Culture Night. And there was 100, and I think that year there was 110,000 people that came into Belfast for that event.
Really?
And then eventually left events and went into youth work. So I done a master's in youth work. So currently that's what I'm still doing. So I run a personal development and employability program for young people that wouldn't be in education, employment, or training. And then I also work with young offenders, so people that would be based in a local prison. And I do the organization I work for is their key value is restorative practices. So I'd be teaching restorative practice training with young offenders. And then in September here, I'm actually going back to do another degree. I'm going to go and become a social worker. So I've just slightly changed again. So my journey's been a bit of a roller coaster with experiences, but it's all been absolutely delightful.
Well, that's nothing wrong with that. Look, my first degree when I was your age, well, a little younger, 20, was architectural design, and I did it for many, many, many years. But then I got a degree in video production when I was in my 40s because I wanted to go that way.
Yep.
And today I don't do neither. I work on doing different catering jobs just because they pay so well. Yeah. So I mean, I'll still freelance here and there with video, but so sometimes there's nothing wrong with changing course.
No, I think that's actually that's the exciting part of life. I think some people might get caught up in. I at the moment have the caveat that I don't have massive responsibilities, which allow me to be able to explore different options and things. I don't have I still live at home currently, so things like that. But being able to explore different experiences and go on a journey of different jobs and things like that. The best part about it is I've taken skills from every single job that I've ever been in, and those skills stay with you, and those experiences stay with you. And I think then ultimately those skills and experiences then allow you to project those into other areas. So for example, with wrestling, I would consider myself to be pretty good with people, and obviously from some of the examples that I've provided, I've been in some very unique sort of situations with and experienced some pretty unique experiences, which allow me then to be more comfortable in the ring. I don't think there's anything that I don't think I've ever got in the ring and been nervous of what potentially could be thrown at me from, for example, for an audience member. And I think that's one of the most important things about being in the ring is being confident in who you are, that if anyone is able to fire a shot at you, per se, verbally, or throw something that might catch you a wee bit off guard, that you have that sort of that bulletproof armor that you can either throw it back or turn it into something else that'll allow you to regain sort of control in that moment. So I think that has actually been one of the very positive things that I've been able to have throughout my journey professionally as well, is those level of experiences, which has allowed me then in my spare time, when I'm pursuing the things that I love to do, that I can take those skills and those experiences and project them then to what I love doing, which is professional wrestling.
Well, and with that, I just got to say, event. I'm listening here. Event coordinations and stuff, like event degree or whatever, and then youth, working with youth. I think Nathan could utilize you just for the promoting side of things, if he hasn't already. So I think your skill set definitely would help him with Northern Ireland professional wrestling.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I think that's what I love about the promotion as well. It's one of those things where Nathan isn't that sort of gatekeeper. If you have an idea, he's willing to hear it. Mm-hmm. And we're all in the boat where we want everyone to succeed. because if we all succeed, then if each individual succeeds, then we all succeed. So the thing about Northern Progress NIPW is that there isn't really any ego, so you can have those open conversations. And if someone is stuck, and they utilize people's strengths and their skills, which I think has got us this far, and allowed us to build momentum. Ultimately, Nathan's the buck stops with him, but he does provide the opportunity to have those conversations. And if you have an idea, he's always willing to hear it. And again, we have a good relationship where if I need support from him, he's there for me, and ultimately vice versa. If he needs anything, I'm there for him too.
Sure. And we got a question here from the crowd. Scenic Spots says, Chris, do you ever bring anything from wrestling to your youth work, or youth work into wrestling? I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but
yeah. So and that's the fun thing about wrestling. So with youth work, and especially where I am at the moment, one of the key values I mentioned earlier, the organization I work for is restorative practice. It's a restorative practice organization. One of the key values of restorative practice is relationships. So ultimately, for you to be able to impact the life of someone else, you need to have a positive relationship. If you don't have a positive relationship, and you're trying to enter into a situation where you want to work with someone, and it's a poor relationship, it's never going to go. It's never going to work. It's never going to go anywhere. So one of the fundamental aspects of youth work is building a relationship with the clients that you work with. And early on, the way in which you achieve that is usually through icebreakers and through different activities which you get to build relationships with young people. And one of it's never too long before the question comes up of share something that you think that everyone else might not know about you. So I always manage to fire wrestling in there as soon as I get the chance. And it almost is like a silver bullet. It blows that barrier open wide, because it is such a niche thing, because it's quite unique, because it's just quite out there, and that really kind of gets the opportunity then to kind of ease tensions, and then to start to connect with the clients that you're working with. So I always manage to throw it in there somewhere. I did a youth work conference at one point. There was like 300 young people attended this youth work conference, and it was one of the values that we were talking about that day was bravery. The bravery to pursue something that you really, really want to do in life. So I actually showed up as the entertainer and did a bit of a spiel and things to this room of young people. And I've never experienced it where it has went down poorly. It's always managed to increase and organically build relationships with the clients that I'm working with. So yes, I have any chance I get, bring wrestling into youth work, because as I say before, wrestling is a part of me. It's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, so I don't shy away from the things that I love, and I'll openly discuss the things that I'm passionate about. So for me to ask someone else to do that, I need to also model that behavior. So yes, anytime I get a chance to talk about wrestling, I do it in a youth work setting. I think maybe, I suppose with youth work into wrestling, I did at early stages with the children's classes. I was involved in it. I have dipped in and out at times, and again, I'm happy enough to do that. And I think that just that youth work experience has allowed me then to, provide a safe space for young people I'm working with. So, being able to connect them with some of the guys at the younger guys training sessions, I think the youth work experience has helped me in that area too.
Keaton, I got a question. So you've been through how long have you been training with the Northern Ireland?
I was about to say from the junior training started. I've been there 2 years.
2 years, and you had worked with Chris, right? Is it in the training portion?
Yeah.
So you've worked with Chris, you've worked with Canary Kid, you've worked with John McCann. Out of the three, what's your I'm gonna put you on the spot here. What do you think of the three of them as trainers?
Oh right, I thought you were going to ask me there who I prefer the most. That's good.
Well, I don't want to put you that much on the spot, but
What if you were going to?
So wait, say it again. What's the question again?
So how did you feel about Chris as a trainer compared to Ricky, compared to John? You know,
Yeah, I suppose you knew a lot more about youth work, I suppose. Yeah, you knew more about youth work, obviously, and you knew more about helping us learn better. Where Ricky and John are kids who obviously know loads. I'm not saying you don't know loads. I'm just saying you know how to find different strategies and all to make us learn better
so you
about
think the
wrestling.
fact that he's a little bit older kind of
Yeah,
showed as far as what he was teaching you?
yeah.
A little bit. What did you learn from Chris? What would you say his number one quality is as a trainer with the kids?
His number one quality is, um, this is so hard to answer. His
Or
number
what
one
did you pick up from him, like that you really can say, "Hey, I learned this from Chris"?
Well, I remember the thing I remember the most is you taught us how to do a good entrance. Yeah, I remember I done actually my first entrance from behind the curtain. That was the first thing you taught me. That's probably the best thing you've taught me.
I mean, as far as like how to present yourself in front of a people, in front of a crowd.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's cool. But yeah, continue on, Keaton. I just had to get that question in there myself.
What's your first memory of wrestling, Chris?
In terms of from starting with the dojo,
Yeah.
or just like my
No,
first
just
ever
being a wrestling
experience.
fan. Yeah.
Oh, I think so. The very, very, very early exposure to wrestling, I can remember very vividly WCW being on the TV in the background. I don't even know what channel it was, um, but I was born in '97, so I would have been very, very young, probably like 4 or 5 then. But it was. I just remember. I don't even know what episode it was, but I just remember seeing Sting somewhere in a rafter, or it was some video about Sting with a rafter. And I have always been that person that those over the top characters, the likes of the Mankinds, the likes of the Stings, those sort of the Boogeyman, Hurricane, Kane, all of those sort of people have always been the ones that really stood out to me. And then I remember me and my brother used to love getting toys and like putting them into different situations and like creating stories, and like it's almost like you're in like a movie. And my favorite figure then being this Sting figure. But more as I got old, those sort of the first time I really started to get really properly exposed to wrestling, I think I watched the first ever. It must have been one of those sort of WWE experience highlight sort of videos. But I think it was the first Elimination Chamber. No, maybe not the first. No, it wouldn't have been the first. It was the first one Goldberg was in, and I just remember being like absolutely starstruck. I was like, "What? This is crazy!" Like, because back then it was a lot more. There was a lot more violence, and a lot more sort of like it was just raw.
Well,
it was just,
it's funny you bring that one up because you know what? That was in Minneapolis. That was in Minnesota.
yeah,
And Goldberg busted out of the chamber. I was
yeah.
there. I was in attendance at that thing. And it's funny. You bring that up.
Jealous, absolutely jealous. That just Goldberg is. I know obviously people have their opinions on it, on how fit he is to be a wrestler, but I just see him. I just saw this person who the guy just needed to do one move, and that was the spear, and then the jackhammer, of course. But and then just being hooked. And me and my brother always had the games. So from there, it was always. I think a lot of my experiences with wrestling initially started with the video games because I was always really passionately into video games. I didn't actually get Sky Sports until 2007. So I kind of like, I went through that era of the wrestling video games, and I was very aware of wrestling, but it was around P7, so by 2007, in which I really then started to be hooked in terms of frequently being on the weekly storylines, knowing exactly what was going on from week to week. That sort of build up to WrestleMania 23 was where I was just, we're off to the races. And from there, I was just absolutely just hooked. That was the one thing I thought about all the time, wrestling, all the time.
Yeah, you mentioned Goldberg, though. Whoever made the decision in WCW to have him get beat,
yeah,
that was bad. But whoever okayed it was worse. I don't know who you want to point the finger at, but I would have kept him undefeated for as long as you could with the way the ratings were going with him.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Keaton.
And then how'd your journey start in professional wrestling?
Yeah, so I think we discussed it a wee bit earlier, but it was around about 3 years ago. So I have I've always been a person that I like different experiences. So I go from job role to job role. So it was over COVID, and I took up a part time job with the council, and I was doing this job, and it was like it was being like a car park attendant. So basically, my role was whenever, because of the regulations, whenever the car park got full to a certain degree along the sort of the beaches, those sort of car parks, that you would close the car park. But it was a job that just made me so depressed.
And for our U.S. viewers, Chris, car park, what exactly is a car park?
So what would that be, and what term would you use it? So basically, if you're going to go for a
Garage.
walk, if you're going to go for a walk and you want to go to the beach, and you need just the parking lot.
Okay, so where you'd park your car to go to the park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was my job, and people became so abusive because it was literally, because at that time the only thing you could do was go out for a walk. So here's this person that's standing in their way. The language that I'll not repeat on this channel, but the language that got thrown my way, people spat at me, everything, and and at that time, like, spitting on someone could, like,
With COVID,
with COVID and all, it was like, a death sentence almost in people's eyes. But so I was really, really, I was a bit down in the dumps, and I had always followed wrestling in Northern Ireland. So about end of 2012, 2013, I was a big wrestling fan in the local scene. So I went to every show I could. And I was like, I just really want to do this someday. And I never, the way you always say these things, but you put them off and you put them off, something comes up, something. And then I just saw this post for the dojo, and I just I saw the Young Lion and advertising restaurant. I was like, oh my word, this is divine intervention. So I just went, you know what, I've had enough, and I just want to go and do the thing that I have always dreamed of doing. And I messaged the page and never looked back. So that was May 2021. So yeah.
Well, let's go to our watch along page. Keaton, you'll continue to ask questions, but we're gonna switch gears here and actually got a couple matches at least with Chris involved, and we can see you in action while we continue on with the questions.
And who is your inspiration in professional wrestling, Chris?
Ooh, well, I think I really like those sort of long jackets. So my entrance gear, the long jackets kind of come from my love of Sting. So Sting comes out and he has these sort of flamboyant, especially in his Surfer Sting days, but even up till now, especially you look some of his jackets he wore in TNA, that sort of flamboyant jacket. Macho Man the same, that sort of flamboyant over the top jacket. So that was an inspiration for me. But I think I kind of like combined wee bits and pieces, and the elbow drop comes from the Macho Man. So that old school of like that top rope elbow, the classic old school move, I just loved. I always loved it. Just that one big move from the top that could end it all. Another inspiration, I love Dusty Rhodes. The ability to entertain. I was watching, I think it was like, I watched a match recently, and it was Sting and Dusty against, I think it's Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson. And what Dusty Rhodes can do on a hot tag with just a jab and an elbow is just incredible. Didn't have to do anything else.
You don't have to be flamboyant. You don't have to do big spots, to get over.
Yeah. So just we things like that. So Dusty Rhodes, big inspiration of what you can do with little gestures.
We got a question from the crowd here, guys. It's coming over from our NWF Wrestling channel. TZS Videos asks, speaking of violent wrestling, how far do you guys go? Is the wrestling in NIPW family friendly or hardcore or somewhere in between?
Well, I would say that at our core, NIPW is very family friendly. We're all about our families, very much so. I think every now and again, based on maybe the rivalry or what's going on, some of the matches can go a bit further than what most matches go.
And we're going to see that, by the way, in this highlight here. You're going to see the next match coming up, a dog collar match.
Yeah.
Where you kind of get a little bit of that.
Very good.
Yeah, yep. So we're not afraid to push the envelope a wee bit. But families trust us to put on a show that is going to be appropriate enough for the kids and things. So I would say definitely that in between is very much where NIPW is at. We're
And
not
folks,
that 18 plus sort
the
of market.
person in the blue tights here, that is Chris Mercer in the ring. So just want to point that out.
And who originally coached you, Chris?
It's always been Nathan. So my only coach has ever been Nathan.
And how did you originally start training? No, sorry, I don't know why I said that. How often do you train?
How often do I train? So between 1 to 2 in the ring a week. But outside of that, then I would be in the gym probably another 2 days a week. So between 3 to 4 a week. Yeah.
Do you guys
and then
have
what did
access
you-
to the training facility anytime you'd like to go there? Is it pretty much open any day?
Yeah. So if there is Nathan's very flexible in that way that if say that there's a day, so our 3 sessions a week is Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. But if there's a day outside that you can go, do you know what, this week has been, because everyone has their own commitments. If there is a day outside that where you go, do you know what, I have availability here, I can't make it up to our standard training, and there's a few things I want to try, Nathan will open the facility for us, which is good.
Where do you get your wrestling gear?
So I get all of my gear from a guy in England who goes by the name of M2M Wrestling Gear. Adrian, you call him. So he has done every single pair of tights that I've had. He's very reliable. He's one of those guys that I would say, Adrian, I've got a show coming up in 2 weeks. This is the design I want. Can you do it? He will all. I've never had a time where he has missed a show that I've needed gear for. So he's very reliable.
It's funny how it is nowadays. You can go so many places to get gear, but back in the '80s, guys, there was only a few places, and there was one place to get wrestling boots. And if you didn't know the contact information, you didn't get wrestling boots.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those inside information thing, because this is the kayfabe days. And so you had to know who to talk to get the information to even get wrestling boots. And now look at how you can get boots just so many places, right?
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
What's the worst injury you've ever had?
What's the worst injury? Well, my fingers crossed, touching wood, crossing the toes and everything. I've been very fortunate enough that I've had not really anything major, to be honest. When I first started in May, I think it must have been just my body adjusting, but my back just gave out the first few weeks. And I had then about a month delay of getting back in the ring. But I think that was just my body adjusting. As you know, the bumps, especially early on, it's like a shock to the system. Your body just goes, what are you doing to me? But thankfully, I haven't had anything major. I've only ever had one major injury, and that was actually Olympic wrestling. A guy went in for a single leg takedown when I was in probably my first year, and the upper half of my knee went forward, and the other half went back. So it kind of did that sort of bend, and it clicked.
Oh,
So I couldn't walk on it for about at least a month. Thankfully, nothing broke, but yeah, that has only been the biggest thing I've had. So thankfully, I've been pretty safe up to now, where someone has been looking out for me.
How long did you do amateur wrestling, Chris?
I did it for a couple of years. It's one of the things I kind of always regret giving up. I think I was too young at the time to really appreciate what it was. I actually got into it because I was such a fan of professional wrestling, and my mum was like, because literally Dave's, so Dave Finlay Senior, which is Finlay on WWE, WCW, his dad ran a wrestling school, literally at the bottom of my street. I mean this, at the bottom of my street. You walk down, there's a wee alleyway, and then there's a youth centre. And he done that, and Mum was like, "Oh, well, this must be the same thing." So I was thinking I was getting into the ring, I was going down and do this, and it was the amateur wrestling. But I did it for a couple of years. So I did it from, I think, probably start of P7 up to probably about the end of second year. But again, I don't think I appreciated it as much. I wish.
Well, a lot of the trainers will say that the guys that have had amateur background really can take to the training of professional wrestling a lot easier than guys who haven't. I've
Yeah.
heard that over the years.
I would say that, and I used to get teased a lot in school about it. I think it's that sort of uniqueness of it. When I would have said I do Olympic wrestling, and people were like that we're doing football and rugby, they would have said, well, we do the real sort of sports. And I always just said, I was like, honestly, come down to this training because you'll understand why it's so intense. Because we would have had guys who would have came in and there would have been jiu-jitsu background. There would have maybe bodybuilders, and they're going, well, I'm a bodybuilder. I'm built like a house, and they're done 20 minutes of a warm up, and they would have said, no, that's me. I'm going home.
And they gassed out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, the most intense exercise I've ever done, and I wholeheartedly say that still to this day. It's the most intense.
Yeah, I've always said too, another sport like that is boxing. If anybody's ever tried boxing a few rounds, you talk about needing to be in shape. And even going 3, if you've never boxed before and you try to go 3 legitimate rounds, you'll be gasping for your breath.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think people just assume, people always attach a six-pack to peak physical shape. And being in shape is so much more than that. You may not have the beach bod, as I say. That is one aspect potentially of being in shape, but being able to bump and get up, being down, being up, there's just nothing like it. That level of cardio. It's the cardio stuff that is the most intense.
But as you both know, after a while your body gets callous to it and you get used to it and it becomes like a routine. It's almost like riding a bike. But in the beginning, yeah, when you're learning it and you're first starting to learn and train, that's where it's really hard. And that's where a lot of people will come into and I'm sure you've seen it with the juniors. They'll come in, they'll try for a bit, and they're gone, right? Not everybody sticks with it.
Not even just the juniors, it's the seniors too.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people I've introduced myself to, and I haven't seen them the next week. And then that's just the nature of the beast. Wrestling spits out as many as it brings in, probably more, probably dramatically more. Because, and I always say to people, anyone that's new, I'd say, look, without a doubt, you're going to feel this in the next day or two. But all your intentions, all your signals are going to be saying, get out of here, don't come back. It's too painful. But I just say, just stick with it, because eventually your body, one day, it'll just click and it'll be okay. But until that moment, you're going to be in a lot of pain.
We got a comment here from Bring Back Patty on the match we're watching. Is this mixed? Who are the other two? They are very good too. The girl in the black is so brave. The girl in the black. He must be referring to Crooks, right?
Well, I think that's. I don't know. I think that may be Patty in disguise. It says Bring Back Patty, but maybe one of our former colleagues. But I think he has a wee bit of a bone to pick with Dee Dee, so I'm not surprised for that comment.
The more and more I watch Dee Dee Crooks, you guys, the more and more I appreciate his heel work. He is so good.
Without a doubt.
I mean, really, for a heel, he really is.
I'm not just saying this, but I genuinely believe there's no one that I have better charisma or better chemistry with in the ring than Dee Dee. I actually knew Dee Dee before wrestling, and I've known him for quite a number of years. So we do have and we saw that going into the dog collar match. We did a promo and stuff leading into that, and calling back to all that sort of stuff. But in terms of charisma and in terms of his character work and his ability to just be there when you need him to be there, I just think there's no one. If you were to say straight off the bat, who would you want to get in and do 10 continuous matches with, it would be Dee Dee, because he just knows his stuff, and we click so well in the ring.
I don't know if Dee Dee Crooks has ever been a babyface, but if he hasn't, he's so good at a heel. He reminds me of like a Bobby Heenan, where you just could not fathom the idea of cheering the guy ever. He's so good at being the bad guy,
I face only a mother could love, is what you're trying to say,
Well,
Sean.
not so much as just his whole the way he insults the crowd, the way he gets into his character, and everything, and just he's the guy you love to hate, and that's how Heenan was back when he managed.
I think the fun thing is it's kind of got to this Batman and Joker type rivalry where we continuously go back to and tease out, and it's one of those stories that we can continuously go back to, which is quite fun. It's the rivalries never sort of finish. I mean, we every now and again we kind of almost become friends, but then he goes and does something really dastardly. Like we have a lot of partnerships, and one of our partnerships, the Heat Up Dojo in Japan. Some of the colleagues that came over, and we had a tag team match. So it was us putting ourselves on the line for at the time NXG against Heat Up. So we were representing, and of course, DD walked out on me and turned his back on me, which led in then to our rivalry and into the dog collar match. But yes, could wrestle him. It's a face that you just love to punch, Sean.
Well, speaking of getting on your case here, Joe88, boo the entertainer. Joe is better with a bunch of smiley faces or laughing faces. So just had to get that in there for you.
I'll not shed too much light on that person that continuously is always a bee in my bonnet is the term, Sean.
But yeah, I mean, I and the other thing, I remember Ricky Henry telling me, the Canary Kid, he said one thing that Crooks does that he just can't stand is he starts out with a big open hand slap right to the face, good and hard. And he says it's just enough to make you angry the way Ricky described it.
Yeah. And he's always that type of person that just manages to inject himself into situations that you just go, do you know what, and you just never know when he's going to turn up or what he's going to do.
Now, this little guy here, you guys, who's he?
That's he had a character called the Flamma, but right now he's called Alex Fox.
Okay, small guy, huh?
Yeah, he doesn't wrestle here no more. Have you ever heard of Paige?
No, I've not heard of
The
him.
women's wrestler. Well, he wrestles over in Lemons, WAW, within Night Family now, I think. Doesn't he, Chris?
Okay.
Yeah, Soraya, that's in NIPW.
Mm-hmm.
Her family, the Knights, they own WAW, so that's where Alex is training at the moment.
And here we have another comment from Carrick Poole. He says, "Get DD Crooks on sometime, please." I believe he's scheduled, right, Keaton? We got him coming up.
Yeah, we do. We'll have him
Yeah.
on stage. Pure Filth coming on.
Yeah, so that you will be seeing DD Crooks soon enough.
Just remember to disinfect your screens after you've talked to those guys.
So Chris, what's your favorite training seminar you've ever had?
Oh, what's my favorite training seminar? Let me just consult my notes here. I've had a few.
Oh, there's that elbow. That's that Randy Savage elbow you were talking about.
Yes, that's it right there. Let me see. So
while you're doing that, I'm going to bring in another comment from Joe. You can read it. Yeah, he says, "I don't know what it was, but from day one, as a fan, Chris is just someone you can sit and watch compete in the ring, but he's got great personality and can work off any fan that sits in the crowd." So a compliment for you, Chris.
I'm always waiting. It's one of those ones, the person that's so sarcastic for so long that whenever they actually say something nice, you don't know if they're being nice or not. But I was just looking at my notes there, and I have to say, probably one of the most enjoyable ones that I have to say is, and I think it's just more from the just quite the technical side of things. I've been to a few LJ Cleary seminars, and they have been pretty good. In terms of just enjoyable, just maybe just it's been the people that have been there. I'd say a lot of the ones I've been to quite a few, but LJ is very good. Tucker, I went to one on Friday night, and just in terms of the technical aspect of things, Tucker delivered a really good seminar. We were doing a variation of pins and things, teaching us different techniques. So it was good coming up to a big match. Maybe that helped me on Saturday, the night before, being able to train with the person I was competing with. I learn a wee bit of maybe being able to steal a couple of their ideas and be able to step up against them. So that was a great seminar. So it was. Um, yeah. Another interesting one. It was just unique in terms of the way it was delivered. Was Jonathan Gresham. I don't know if you're familiar. Are you familiar with him, Keaton? Yeah.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. So he's in. I think he's currently wrestling in TNA. He has a
Oh
mask,
yeah, yeah.
but he is it just. I mean, a memory bank of submission holds and locks, and just has an idea for everything. Yeah.
This is interesting. This dog collar match. I've the last match I ever wrestled was a Russian chain match, which is very similar to this. The only difference is you're handcuffed with the chain, with the handcuff to the chain to the other handcuff to the other guy, so to the wrist.
Mhm.
And I was wrestling with PWA and Eddie Sharkey and Troy, my opponent. He wanted to do Troy Steenerson. You know who I'm talking about, Keaton, from the
Yeah,
book.
Slick Stenerson.
Slick Steenerson. He wanted to do this chain match, and his plan was to juice. He was gonna, he was 18 at the time. We were old enough to do it, right? We weren't kids anymore. And but Wally Carbo, famous promoter of the AWA, and Al Dersh and a bunch of guys were in attendance, and Eddie Sharkey caught wind of this. And he's like, I don't want you guys doing any juicing in this match. He was afraid it would set a bad example with these guys. And Troy was so mad when I got there. He's like, this sucks. This is a chain match. There's going to be no blood. He goes, I'm going to do it anyway. I said, Troy, you do it. Eddie will never let you work here again. I said, don't ruin it. I said, tell you what, we'll sell it. Put the chain. I was thinking to Bobby Heenan in WrestleMania. He had a strap match with Ken Patera, a strap thing, and he put the strap around his neck, and Ken went and threw him back and made it look like he catapulted his head off, right? I said, put the chain around my neck, throw me, and I'll go sell it for you. We'll sell it to make it look like it kind of took my head off, type of thing. And I never tried this, you guys. This is a freaking chain, right? So he went and did it. He yanked it so hard, I thought I dang near broke my neck doing this. So I kind of just sold it like a drop kick type of thing, make it look like he just took me off my feet. Man, I'll never forget it. But yeah, he was concerned because he wanted to have some color, and Eddie didn't want him to do any color. Did you guys? I haven't even seen this match. Did you guys do any color with this, or you just pretty much stick to the dog collar?
No, we pretty much stuck to the call. I mean, there was a couple of conversations and things, and as going back to that sort of that family, sometimes you don't know how people are going to receive certain things.
Yeah,
It was the idea of maybe that's a step too far, so we decided not to go down that route as much.
yeah.
But I think after the fact, then there's that conversation of, well, maybe it was the first ever in Northern Ireland, so maybe we should have. Because there's
because it's the idea that you have a metal chain that but this kind of goes more back to the kayfabe days. We're trying to say, hey, this is real. If you have a chain, somebody's got to bleed. So and blood was so much more prominent back then. I don't think it is as much anymore, though.
No, and I think it's starting to become that thing of like there's almost like a dirtiness attached to it at times, and whenever it's brought out, because it is so rare, people are like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that.
Right.
Whilst I know whenever I was a kid, I was like, yes, the match is great now because it's got blood. But now I think now, people are like, oh, that's a bit, that's a bit gross.
Right.
Yeah. And then there's also that, we know so much more about blood and stuff now. There's such a scare that comes with it, with regards to, the
diseases and what you can catch.
Yeah. And cleanliness and things like that. So people are they're a bit, but I still think whenever it's done right, I still think there's a place for blood. I just think that for a while, I think it was getting overused.
Right.
And it devalues it. Whilst now, whenever you bring it out, it's, whoa, there's that shock appeal to it.
Well, the 70s were famous for color, and a lot of people, back then they didn't know how they got it. They used to think, oh, they use powder, or maybe they use blood capsules. Well, if they did that, I mean, where are they going to keep it? In their tights? And what happens if it breaks?
Exactly.
That's not going to look right.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's I'm kind of glad wrestling's evolved away from blading though, because when the first time I ever did it, I got a scar to remember it by, because I got too excited and pressed too hard, and next thing you know, I was on my way to the hospital because I had to. It was not done. I didn't do it right, so it can be a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Just
Sean,
say
you
that.
need to. There's a new comment, then you need to read this out to Chris.
Oh, let's see here. From Steve.
Yes.
All right. Steve Savage says, "Glad you are okay with blood."
Well, the first thing that I would say back to that is I'm finally glad to actually hear something from Steve. I've been trying to say for months that, and to this point, I have done everything exactly the way I said I was going to do it, and now I'm at the point where I'm going to face Steve for his championship in a very short period of time. So it's actually good that Steve has decided to use his social media accounts to actually start engaging with people. Because for so long he's been very, very quiet. So it's very, very nice to actually know that he's alive and doing well. So I look forward to seeing him very, very soon.
So now that Steve Savage is here, what is your message to Steve Savage?
Well, I think my message, Keaton, to Steve really hasn't changed. I said I was coming back whenever we rebranded the Northern Ireland Pro Wrestling. I was coming back to be the leader. And one of the key things about leading is leading by example and doing everything that you say you're going to do and doing it to your best ability. And I think I've proved that. No one can touch me on the mic. No one can beat me in the ring. No one can get to my level. Here's a short example. Who's the person that they're calling the name for? The Entertainer. So Chris Mercer is clearly going to be the leader of Northern Ireland Pro Wrestling for a very, very long time to come. And the only thing that I need to do to cement that title is to have the Resolution Heavyweight Championship, something that Steve has. Now, there's probably a lot of dust on it because Steve doesn't seem to really come out of his cave very often and actually do anything with it. If this was an election, I would be saying vote for change because that's the complete opposite of what I'm going to be doing with it. It's going to be polished up real nice and it's going to be presented everywhere that I go. And it's going to be very, very simple. Whenever I get into the ring with Steve Savage, I'm going to drop the best elbow drop that anyone has ever seen. I'm going to have my hand raised in victory. 1, 2, 3. And if Steve has anything that he wants to say against that, I have 4 words. And what are those 4 words, Keaton? Try and stop.
Oh, try and stop me.
So, guys, with the chain match, one thing we always found when we did ours is sometimes you land on the damn thing. And that that doesn't feel good. Did you have any of that in this match?
Yeah, well, so obviously you do your research going into these things, and it's not like there is a lot of database to work off in regards to the technologies. I say it's more a 70s and 80s type thing. So there's not really many people that I can, really contact and ask, well, how do you do this? So it's really, a lot of this is just, before we went out, the day before, I went and got the chains cut and everything, and we stood in the ring just to make sure that it was the right distance. But none of this is practiced. So it really was going out there and just working it and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
And that is, that's the only thing I really could do. Thankfully, again, I've always been blessed with someone being there, divine intervention, call it, being able to have someone by my side that is clearly looking out for us. We managed to, leave it in one piece. And ironically, it is probably the match that I've had the least pain from. I don't know why, but I wasn't too bad, leaving that ring that night. Considering some of the spots that you see in this match, but it was really just the short answer is trial and error, really.
Right. Yeah. That's how mine was too. I know I came from Wisconsin. I had no time to rehearse or even talk. We just worked it in the ring, and it's like one of those things. Other than that little deal around my neck, which he did twice, by the way, and I thought he broke my neck both times. Other than that, we didn't talk. We just worked it in the ring like you guys,
The whipping of the belt wasn't practiced either, I can assure you that.
Yeah, one of my favourite things about you, Chris, is your promos. Well, most of them. Can you remember that single promo that changed our
I like this
perspective on each other.
Yeah, so I think the one you're referring to, Keaton, is that time that, I mean, I would say, and I'm not afraid to admit it, is probably my greatest strength is my ability to connect with the audience. And I think I'm pretty good at telling a story. And I managed to come out this evening
Go
and,
for a pile driver.
yeah, pile driver on the chair. Um,
Nice.
I managed to come out and convince the audience that I potentially could be retiring. So I did this big speech, and then I dedicated the video on the screen to Keaton, in which I then bait and switched the audience and ripped up his poster. And then,
Now, wasn't there a time though, Chris, where you did leave and come back? 'Cause I thought Keaton, I thought you said Chris Mercer returned, and that was a surprise in
Yeah,
a
it
recent
was a
video.
surprise because I know you left for a wee while. Why
Yeah.
was that actually?
so I took a short break. I think it was from around November time until what are we in now? We're in July, so I've been back a couple of months, Keaton, haven't I? So I
Yeah.
took about a 4 month break, 4 months. Yeah.
And so if you could have a dream match, who would it be with?
Oh. I mean, like anyone whatsoever.
Yeah, no matter WWE, NXT, Titanic, anywhere.
Retired or active.
Yeah, dead or alive.
I think, honestly, I could die a happy man if I ever got to step, even in the same ring as Sting. To me,
That'd be awesome.
You've mentioned Sting an awful lot. He's got to be one of your big inspirations, then, right?
definitely.
Biggest.
I think the thing I really like so much about Sting is, and for me, a bit of a role model, is that any interview I've watched, and I've watched quite a few, no one ever really has anything bad to say about Sting. You know, there was obviously there's so much controversies and everything throughout wrestling. Wrestling's known for its dramatics, both in and
Not
outside.
just wrestling fans.
Yeah, all the dark side of the ring stuff, all these mad sort of situations. And for me, Sting was just the kind of that guy that just kind of, yeah, that guy just sits in the corner and is just like, yep. So and just glides through and continues to be professional and just manages to continue on and be one of those sort of timeless classics that no matter what part of his career, there was no moment you're like, oh flip, Sting, like, he really let himself go there, or like there was a moment where you're just like, this is the moment that he kind of let himself down. He's always been that sort of timeless classic that people have always a fond thing to say about, and I would love that for to be part of my legacy of just, that guy, he gave it all in his ring, or in the ring. He left it all in, and any time that he engaged anyone, he always gave it his all. And he always gave it his best. I have a positive memory of him. I don't want to be that sort of person that kind of goes, oh well, at one point he was good, but then he kind of really went downhill, and then
Well, yeah, when he first started out, him and Ultimate Warrior, I believe, tag team the Blade Runners.
Yeah.
Did you like the Surfer Sting, or did you like more of the black and white Sting?
So I was never accustomed to the Surfer Sting, because it was that black and white. I remember as a kid, TNA, I just think had so many hidden gems of matches and stuff like that. And I remember as a kid, I've never been so excited for some of the stuff that happened in TNA. I remember it was Sting and Jeff Jarrett always had a great rivalry in TNA. And I remember Lockdown, and it was Sting's Army versus Jeff Jarrett's group. And just, I don't know, I was just taken by Sting. Just again, the costumes, the outfits, the way, his howl to the audience, the way he come down from the rafters. That sort of one-man army that, like, there could have been 10 guys in the ring, and all it took was Sting to come out with a baseball bat and clear house.
His early matches with Ric Flair were phenomenal. I mean, the early stuff he did with him, he was like a company guy too. He stayed with WCW to the very end.
Yeah, he was basically the WCW version of Undertaker in terms of that loyalty, I would say.
Oh yeah.
That person that just, you've given me a good life, and I'm gonna, pay it back. He recognized, he respected. If you invested in him, he would be loyal to you, and I think that's a powerful trait. Not very many people, because ultimately it could have went either way for him. Same with Undertaker. Undertaker probably could have, at his early stages, probably could have banked a lot more money in WCW than he did in WWE when he was starting to take off as Undertaker. But because Vince McMahon gave him that opportunity to be the Undertaker, and it was, he stayed where he was, and he toed the line, and now he's an icon. To me, Sting is probably up there in the Mount Rushmore, and I think sometimes he's a wee bit undervalued and underrated in that respect in terms of the Mount Rushmore wrestling, just because I think probably because he was in WCW, and he probably didn't get that level of exposure as the likes of a Hulk Hogan would have. But
Definitely.
in terms of the profile, the brand, the image, just how iconic he is, I think he's definitely up there.
And he was well respected by the boys. A lot. You can't find anybody saying really a bad thing about him. Now here's another comment from Steve Savage. Speaking of Sting, he says, "Chris, you will experience Sting in the ring next time I'm up north." So there you go.
Oh, I don't know if that's. I don't know if that is that Steve finally confirming that he's actually going to wrestle at some point in Northern NIPW. So it's good again. Steve finally has decided to put not put pen to paper, but put words to computer. I mean, talk is just one thing. Actions speak louder than words. But unfortunately for Steve, his words and his actions have went hand in hand, which has been completely zilch. So he can speak as much as he wants. He can be a computer tough guy if he wants, but we'll see. We'll see. It's to be seen whether or not. I mean, I'm killing it. I'm entertaining up north. The invitation's always there, anytime, any place. I'll come down to Hard Knocks. If he wants me to beat him in Hard Knocks, I will come down and will happily take the title from him there. That's no problem. Just name time, place.
Oh, hang on, guys. We got a table coming in the ring here. Things are starting to heat up in this match.
So I think not only was this the first dog collar match, but for NXT, this was the first. You always got to watch out for those low blows. This was the first table, I think, introduced for NXT. So yeah, some moments happening.
But you have to get real creative with this chain, though, don't you? It's like you gotta. What can you do with it? I remember. I imagine you were thinking the same thing. What can we do with this chain, right? As you're doing the match.
Because it's something. It creates the aura and it creates the atmosphere, but then as much as it can be enabling, it can also be very limiting too. Because ultimately, you can only go a certain distance. So there's that. So how do you make use of that? There's only so many specific moves that you can do with a chain. So you have to be kind of how can that chain then enhance other spots. Also, I think when you're going to a match, it's a thing of, well, what are the iconic things that you do? What are the iconic things that I do? And how then can we sort of mingle the chain into these movesets?
I know one time I ended up wrapping up Steenerson with the chain and then tried to tighten it up, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this isn't exactly looking right. I shouldn't even be going down this road with the chain. It's like like you said, you got to get creative with it, right?
Yeah. And it's also the thing as well, is certain things you suggest, you kind of, as you say, you don't have time to kind of practice or rehearse. So, earlier whenever I was getting up, in theory, wrapping the chain around my arm and doing the elbow drop sounded like a really easy thing to do. But then I was like, hold on a second. I have to just sit up on the rope. I can't go through the rope and up because then the chain will get stuck. So, yeah, you have to think of almost like the theory of how the chain will actually allow you to do it.
I think we're going to see this table come of use here fairly quick, right?
Yes, I believe so.
NXT now NIPW is going from strength to strength. What's the secret to their success?
I think, to be honest, just the consistency. I think all the guys are so dedicated, and also as well, it's a team.
Whoa! Right through the table.
And as you saw, sorry, I'll come back to that in a wee second, Kim. As you saw, sometimes your moves can go against you, Sean.
Yeah.
Because I basically beat myself in this match.
I wasn't sure who won.
Yeah, so because I suplexed Didi,
now we're repeating. I'm going to come out of this, guys.
His arm landed on top of me at the very end. We were both down and out, but because his arm was on top of me, technically got the pin. So
yeah,
unfortunate. But yeah, it's good to go back to your question there, Keaton. I think it's the team atmosphere. I think energy always translates. So bad energy breeds bad energy, and positive energy breeds positive energy. And every time we have a show, the guys go out there and they leave it all in the ring. And there's no egos. everyone is on a level playing field, and everyone goes out to make it the best match they possibly can, but not even the best match they possibly can, the best show they possibly can. Um, and that's the incredible thing. And I think that in the back then translates to the front, and the audience see that. And I think, the proof is in the pudding. That last show that we done last night, at the end, the fans were red hot. We put our tickets on sale then, today, and we're half sold already for our next show. So the audience feel it. They feel the momentum building, and they want to be a part of that journey. And of course, again, a small venue can play against you, but also it can also be your biggest strength. People know that there's a limited amount of tickets, and they want to be a part of that experience. They want to be a part of that story. They want to be in those moments, and they want to be along with us on that journey. So they know they have to get in early to get those tickets.
I'm surprised that Nathan hasn't enabled standing room only yet. Selling more tickets to get more people in if they want to come, and then really packing that place in there. You got to be careful because fire regulations and stuff. But I know when we were doing our Armory card, one of our big sellouts, I had the guy who was running the Armory, because we were sold out and we were doing standing room only at that point. And he would come up and he says, we do have a maximum capacity limit here. You are getting very close. And he goes, how many people do you got in here? And I'm like, my thing is about three. I never gave him the real number because I was afraid if I said what we actually had in there, he's going to turn them away. And I didn't want to turn anybody away, But do you think you could get more people in your venue? Just stuff them in?
It's a difficult one. I think it could potentially be to the detriment of the show. And the only reason I say that is I go back to that again. NIPW, it's all about the families. It's all about the kids, and sort of bringing that grassroots of from a young age and allowing them to experience wrestling over time. That's where really our focus is at. So to create that standing room only could potentially hinder then the audience experience in regard to you have a lot of small members of the audience, and then that sort of, if you had adults coming in and stuff like that, it might. Again, it goes also hand in hand as well. The legalities of things, insurances and stuff like that. You're only allowed X amount of people in a space, and it's so strict now in regards to what you can and can't have. So I think really we're kind of at our limit with that.
But if you did standing room only, though, you don't charge them full price. It's not like it'd be like a half price deal because they don't have a chair to sit. But I remember in the Civic Center they did it too in the AWA shows, and everybody would get to sit in the aisles, and that's what you'd have.
Yeah.
So we got a comment here, a couple of them here. Scenic Spot says, I must say these guys are great wrestlers and super sellers too. Very entertaining indeed. And then another comment from the same person. He says, Keaton, is that a young Chris Mercer on the Wrestling All-Stars poster behind you?
Yes, it is. This was one of the first shows I went to. Well, not the first because I was on different shows, but I saw the poster on the outside and I said that poster. I said this Nathan, that poster looks awesome. And he says to me, do you want it? So he got all the wrestlers to sign it, and Chris was one of the biggest stars at that point on it, and he's on the front poster there. Cool. So who was he against at that point? Oh yeah, you were against the Student Debris.
Yeah. You were talking about dream matches earlier. I have wrestled Debris before, but we wrestled at that very early stage. I think that was very early on, and Bruce just went. It's one of the most talented wrestlers on the scene. One of the guys from CTW in Portugal, and I haven't managed to get to wrestle him again on a 1-to-1 basis. And again, if you were asking me someone I'd really love to wrestle in the future, Bru would be up there. And a guy I think you would it would be really cool for to have on your channel. I think in terms of his story and where he's at with wrestling and things, I think future guy to have on the show, Keaton, definitely. Very, very kind-hearted. A nice story about him. We done a show for CTW. They had brought me over to Portugal. So they usually wrestle in Lisbon, but they had decided to go hit the road and go up to Porto, and that's where Bru's family is from. So it was kind of one of those like home shows. So that I think there hadn't been a show in Porto in like something like 13 or 15 years, something. I think it was something around that time. So wrestling had been very, very quiet in that area for a very, very long time. So went into this big leisure centre and had a show on there. But Brew actually, his whole family put me up for the few days that I was over, drove us around and just really took care of us. And in terms of probably one of the most heartwarming experiences in my wrestling career, Brew has been a part of that. So I just think in terms of the character of a person, you definitely want to be like a Brew.
And here's another comment from Jonathan.
McElroy.
How do you pronounce it?
McElroy.
McElroy?
Johnny McElroy.
Johnny McElroy. The atmosphere in that little dojo is the best in the North by far. Must be a fan, right?
He's a ring announcer.
Or is he ring announcer? Ah.
Yeah.
All right. See, I don't know. You're all, you know these people, Keaton. I only know I'm limited. Let's just say that.
Big shout out to Johnny. He's a legend, and he definitely, in terms of, I think, what is so good about the team is that everyone really knows their roles, and they exceed at it. And I was saying to Johnny yesterday just about how of a positive contribution he makes to the NIPW roster. The announcer, people, and this thing, whenever I got into wrestling, I was very, very aware of how important everyone's role is, from the referee, from the stage crew, right up to the announcing, and then the wrestlers. The announcer is what makes the show. If the announcer opens the show badly, then that just has a knock-on effect onto everything. So it really takes a good announcer to really enhance and lift your show up to the next level in terms of even your the professionalism of your product is down to the announcer. If you have a really solid announcer, people go, wow, these guys, they really mean business. So shout out Johnny.
You know, and it's funny you bring that up because, like, a referee, you know, people think, well, what's the ref going to do? One thing I remember Eddie Sharkey, when he reffed, he always would react. He would react to him, like, say a big spot happens. He'd put his arms up like this, and that sells the match, too, when the referee gets into it like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't think that, but when you watch a match close, watch the referees, watch what they do. That's how they're helping sell the whole thing, you know? Yeah. It makes the spot look that much more, you know?
I definitely agree with you. I think, you know, if you think of a fan, even attention spans these days, people, you know, they're constantly looking for something new, something different. You know, they're always watching every single little detail. And if you're watching and you turn around and a guy selling really, really, you know, he's really, really trying to show you and convince you about the pain he's in from, you know, from the moves he's taking in the ring, and then you turn over to the ref and the ref stand there like it doesn't matter at all.
Right.
Then you're going to go to yourself, well, there's something up there then, because if he doesn't believe it, why should I?
Right.
The person in the ring calling the action, or, you know, and being there, and they've got the closest view in the house, and they don't believe it.
And that's either just an inexperienced ref or a ref that has not been told how to ref. You know, that's what you got there.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, I mean, sometimes trainees would be given the opportunity, you know, early on, you know, before they actually get in the ring to be a wrestler, they're given the opportunity to being a ref, and I think that comes down to sometimes that confidence of, do you know what? It's okay for me to let myself go. You know, that's the first step in really embodying the, you know, the dramatics of it all. And you know, and the more you're into it, I mean, that's it. You know, if you ever went to a show or a theater production or anything, and the people aren't into it, you're like, why am I here? Like, if they are not into it, why should I be into this? I think, you know, it's the same with wrestling.
And I don't think it's as much anymore, but back in the day, the referees always wore wrestling boots. I don't know if they still do now. Probably not. But that was a big deal. You know, the refs would have the boots on as well.
Yeah, I think that tradition's kind of, from what I've seen, I think the tradition's kind of, it's depleted. People usually just wear trainers and things.
Right. Yeah.
And what other places have you wrestled, Chris, besides NIPW?
So, if you go on my profile, I only follow the promotions that the only followers that I follow are the promotions that I've worked with. So I think I've got about 9 promotions I've worked with.
That's a lot, though.
Yeah. So again, I've only 2 years I've been wrestling, and I've wrestled well over 150 matches now. So I've managed to go from, you know, pretty much all the promotions up north, and then down south, the only 2 promotions I haven't worked with has been RCW and OTT. So they're still on the list, but I've been able to go to, there's a touring promotion called LDN over here at Superstar Wrestling. I've managed to go to around London with them. I've wrestled in Squared Circle Wrestling over in Manchester.
Oh, Marty.
yeah, and I've managed to go to Portugal on a number of occasions. So in that short space of time, I've been given a lot of good opportunities. I met a lot of people that I really respect and have valuable connections with. So yeah.
Well, I've got a
Um,
question that Keaton hasn't asked yet, and he usually does ask. Who's your favorite opponent to face so far? Who's been your favorite?
Probably by far, I mean, without a doubt, immediately comes to mind is DD Crooks.
DD Crooks?
I think there's just again, it's like that Batman Joker vibe of like it's the person you continuously go up against, but every time you go up against them, there's something that there's new about it. There's something that's new, but there's also something that's comforting because it's happened before. But it's also there's just a certain chemistry that we have when we get in the ring. Maybe it is because we genuinely hate each other, and there is just that like bad blood.
So
But
that's who you got ring chemistry with, you feel, as well.
yeah, yeah. So there's
Yeah.
always we always manage to bring the best out of each other. And some of my best matches have been with Didi, I would say for sure.
And what in over just in Northern Ireland as a country, which wrestling promotion has had the best fans?
Oh well, without a doubt. I mean, NIPW for sure. I think just in regards to just being able to retain our fan base and be consistent with them, and just that connection. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for other promotions, but I know for a fact with our promotion, from the grassroots kids training right up to the shows and some of our tour and stuff, we've actually managed to bring fans together, and because it is such a family promotion, the families then have connected with each other. There's they take trips to different places. Like yourself, Keaton. Whenever you go to the likes of the Comic Con stuff like that, you're going with people from training. So we're actually bringing people together, and then they're creating their own valuable connections. So I don't know if very many promotions do that. And to me, that's something that's really special. And that's why I believe, and obviously, I probably am a wee bit biased, even though I know I'm right. But NIPW for sure, yeah, without a doubt, hands down.
Well, one thing I'm looking forward to seeing one of these days, and I've told Nathan this, I put the bug in his ear, at Kids Pro Wrestling, I want to see a junior match, preliminary match on one of these shows. I want to see one of the two of those juniors get in the ring and have a preliminary, start
Yeah.
getting them in front of a crowd a little
Yeah.
bit earlier, the ones that are ready for it. You gotta tread that water right. But
Yeah.
I think that
Maybe
would be cool. That'd be a cool thing to see.
Maybe seeing Keaton do a British rounds match soon. What do you think? What do you say,
Yeah.
Keaton?
Wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
I know a lot about British wrestling, like.
And I told Keaton too, if you're bigger than the other kids, I know you got one now that's more your size, but if you're bigger, do it as a handicap match if you need to make it viable. Take two of those littler kids.
I was like yesterday with Dead Gorgeous and Samson Law. Did you see that much?
I didn't get seen it, but I heard it. I heard the energy from the back. It was loud, so it was. But yeah, Samson's a big boy. And now that he has a manager as well with him, Mitch. So that could be a dangerous.
Gosh, I really would love to see managers come back, more prominently than what they used, for how they used to be. Here's a comment from Carrick Poole again. Whatever happened to the previous ring announcer, Joe Lean? He was liked a lot by the fans. Johnny has been great too, but he's asking about Joe Lean. Whatever happened?
So I think the first thing that's important to say about Joe is just how much of a sweetheart the man is. I don't think I've ever met anyone that has a bigger heart than Joe Lean, and I would agree in regards to just he is just a way about him that brings a certain energy thing. I think I don't think there's anything particular that happened to him. I think just Joe has a lot of commitments outside of wrestling, as you probably know, Sean. When you have other people to provide for, and you have a lot of responsibilities, things. And this is sort of a side gig in very many ways, shapes, or forms. Sometimes just
for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, things just catch up on people, and it's unfortunate. But I think he's never really went away, and he does make appearances from time to time. So I would say for sure he'll be back in no time.
But people need to understand when we're dealing with small independent promotions like this necessarily isn't their full-time gig. They have another job or they have something else they're doing in their life, and this is just part of what they do. So certainly understand that. This isn't like the there are some indie promotions that are full time because they're big enough, but most of your indie leagues are going to be like what you just described. You know.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely, and yeah, I think that's it's a very it's the reality of independent wrestling. We all would love to work it full time, but unfortunately, that's just not the case. And
Yeah.
a lot of the time it is. You're working full time jobs and things like that, and you maybe have a family, you have other responsibilities. Have to put food on the table and pay the bills and things. So sometimes, unfortunately, you just can't make it for shows and things, and that's completely
Sure.
fine.
And I saw you on TV. Now you weren't talking on it, but it was just on BBC News where
Mhm.
you were doing a thing with the Tuned In project. I think you took one of the bumps from them. What was it like working with them?
Yeah, so that was probably one of the funnest shows I've been on. CAW and did a so Sean, I don't know if you're how much you're aware of this, but CAW did a partnership with an organization called Tuned In, which is it's a promotion, or it's an organization up in Londonderry, and it works with young people that have additional needs. So some of the projects the guys have done are absolutely incredible. Some of the stuff they've done with them, but they kind of just thought to themselves, well, we need to raise money because they wanted to bring the guys to Disneyland. So the guys working towards going to Disneyland, they're like, what type of fundraisers are going to do? And they knew the guys love wrestling, so they're very outside the box thinkers, and they don't mind taking risks. So they said, why don't we just do a wrestling show? So then they got in contact with CAW, and it was about 6 months of training. And then they put a big show on in one of the big hotels down that way. And they had basically, it was sort of the way Keaton we would have with the guys on our show in terms of the juniors. So they were coming out, they were part of the show, but then you had experienced wrestlers that were intertwined in them to basically make sure that they were safe in the
Yeah.
ring. So each participant had their sort of moment to shine at this big. I think it was over 200 people, 200 fans at the show. So my role was to have a wrestling match with one of the other experienced wrestlers, but afterwards, I got very annoyed that I didn't get my moment to shine. So I interrupted at the start. I interrupted a choir, which a blind individual was involved in, and I basically insulted that. Well, I don't think I insulted them. I was just speaking facts, but they weren't too amused. So I worked with a couple individuals, and then at the end, I took a couple slams and got hit with a cane. But it was a very impactful event, and it really highlighted what wrestling can do for people,
Sure.
and just the impact it had on the individuals. And it was beautiful to see. BBC is probably one of our biggest broadcasters, so BBC Northern Ireland promoted this event afterwards, and it was just beautiful to see. That guys were able to take a concept and make it into reality, and it just shows you what you can do whenever you take risks safely.
Sure.
And I know you said before that you were doing Olympic wrestling with Dave Finlay Senior. Um, what was your opinion on Dave Finlay Senior getting the MBE for 50 years of service to amateur wrestling?
I think he probably deserved it earlier, to be honest. I mean, he's been in line for that recognition for a very very long time. He's a gentleman. He's that old school. He grew up in sort of White Abbey Village with a lot of my family members that grew up around that sort of same period of time. Like sort of 1940s. He's that old school guy. Just that it's kind of, I don't know about you, Sean, but just sort of you're right. You have those individuals that like could only speak the way they speak, and they're given the opportunity to speak the way they speak because of their age, because of they come from a different generation that
Sure.
just lived a different way and have that respect attached to them. Dave is that sort of person.
It's from a
He
different era.
he's from a different era, and he's just
Yeah.
he's a mind of knowledge, and he's an absolute gentleman. And yeah, I just have all the time in
You
the day
really scared.
for him.
It's
Yeah.
funny, like the old school that you mentioned, like with people like that, there's still elements to this day. Old school isn't gone completely. There's definitely components still here in wrestling, but yeah, that's kind of a lost. And then, for me, like when I was I grew up in the old school era that we would look at as old school today. But I look back at to me, old school when I was your age, Keaton, was like the Gorgeous George and the
Mm.
60s and all that black and white stuff. And I'm thinking, and so I would hear those guys talk, just like how you're describing, Dave Finley, and they had their own, it was all, for them guys, it was always kayfabe, right? They talked like it was real. They never would talk out of character, ever, back in those days, even when it came out, I remember Vern Gagne, even, well after kayfabe was exposed, he would still talk about how hard these matches were and how competitive it was. And he would always
Yeah.
talk that way.
What's
Yeah.
your yeah, definitely. What's your biggest accomplishment you've ever had in professional wrestling?
Oh, I think it was probably last night. I mean, I've had the opportunity to do really some cool things. I mean, probably before last night, I would have probably said winning so we had the Legacy Cup, Sean, which was a tournament, British Rounds tournament, in
Is that
which
like 2 out of 3 falls type of thing?
yeah, so you would do your qualifying match, and then in the finals it would be the British Rounds match, and that was just kind of to pay homage to the British style of wrestling, and to kind of to pay tribute to that sort of generation of wrestling, that sort of world of sport. So that was probably one of the coolest moments, just to be in part of that history. But last night was just a kind of a complete circle moment. So I wrestled last night Tucker, which is probably considered the most experienced wrestler in Northern Ireland. He's pretty much done it all. Been around the block a few times, and has a lot of valuable experience. But also a guy that I went and saw back in 2013, so well over 10 years ago, and was one of the guys I followed so closely. Some of my favorite memories in terms of shows as a fan involved him. To go from that to then wrestling him for the number one contender for our title, I'm not going to lie, I got a wee bit emotional last night after that match, because whenever I was standing in the ring at the end, it was like I had that vision of just being that fan sitting in that seat, just being the breathtaking moments and seeing that, and just I even though I'm looking at the audience, I'm seeing those images just play out in front of me. So for me, that was probably, to date, that's probably one of the greatest highlights.
And what's your so you've had some absolutely amazing moments in professional wrestling, and one is having your own show, Entertainment Tonight with Chris Mercer, where you're interviewing as a guest Marty Jones, 7-time. No, right.
Now, hang
Let
on
me
a
get the
second,
facts right
Keaton.
here.
Entertainment Tonight with Chris Mercer was like his
Yeah.
own show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was
that's interesting. So reminds me of the Bobby Heenan show.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, the like MVP's VIP room, or Chris Jericho's sort of interview type segment. It was sort of that sort of same take.
Oh, kind of like a Piper's Pit type thing.
Piper's Pit. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect, yeah.
Sure.
So and then 7-time middleweight champion Marty Jones, and 5-time mid lightweight champion Marty Jones obviously came out. Great person to have on your show. And he was talking about his career and stuff, and then Steve Savage came out and started disrespecting the older generation, saying bad things about the older generation. Will there be any more guests lined up for Entertainment Tonight with Chris Mercer?
Yeah, because that was the debut episode, and then we've kind of came along a wee bit since then. Well, to be honest, I think that, I mean, the man had a couple of words tonight. It was good to see that Steve's kind of woke up from his I don't know if he's like a vampire in the night. He's just got up from his deep sleep in his coffin and decided to speak a couple of words. But if he would like to come on and be a guest, and actually speak some words for once in a ring, I mean, I think that would be a good guess. What do you think, Keaton?
Oh, I do. Although I don't know if he'd be able to calm down. He gets quite angry in the ring.
I don't even know if he'd be able to show up. I mean, he hasn't been able to do so for the past, I don't know, 5-6 months. I mean, I was away for 4 months, and I've still been on more shows than he has since he's been champion. So, I mean, what does that say to you? But yeah, that would probably be a good guest. I mean, suppose I could have Wrestling Revolution Keaton as one of my guests.
Pretty good.
Yeah. We could do maybe a live stream from the ring. Kayfabe with Keaton in the ring.
Would
Class.
that be another ripping up of a poster though segment or?
Well,
uh,
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that might be a one and done. Depends. Fuck, it was all jokes. You know yourself, Keaton.
what's your dream in professional wrestling?
I see it. What's my dream in professional wrestling? I think just I would love for people to see me the way I have seen the other wrestlers that I saw growing up, and as a fan going to shows. See if I can, in 10 years from now or 15 years from now, Keaton's telling, maybe his own family about, you see, whenever I was a kid, like I used to go to these shows and there was this guy and he's an absolute legend, and I was there the night maybe he won the title, and it was just such a moment and things like that. If that is my legacy in professional wrestling, then I think I've definitely achieved my dream. I just wanted to be a part of wrestling history, um, and I think that I'm going along that journey and I'm enjoying that journey. I don't know what's happening tomorrow. Never mind next month. But in terms of a dream, I just want to be considered someone that went out and gave it their all and was genuinely the most entertaining person in the room. So hopefully that dream will be a reality for many years to come.
It's one of the coolest things, and you guys all know this, is as you get into this business, you become part of that wrestling brotherhood. Everybody's family, even when you venture different areas and talk, you're all part. That's the real magnet to this for people that want to be involved, because it's just so, you know, only guys like you who've been in the ring can know what I'm talking about. It's just something about it. It's a magic feeling being in that ring. Being able to have your character and everything.
I think definitely. I think that is something you've definitely touched on there, Sean. It's something you can't explain, and it's something that other people don't understand. Like I say to my girlfriend sometimes, question like why. Like I showed my girlfriend my chest yesterday or this morning, and like she was like, "Why do you do this? Why?" And I was like, "You just don't understand unless you're in that ring and you're experiencing it." You don't know what it's like to be in that sort of fraternity of people, and it's just something that it's like a line of communication that only people in that world understand. And there's just such a camaraderie. There's probably a lot of different professions that are sort of similar. I mean, being in the likes of maybe the army and things like that kind of be the same sort of idea, that sort of, or the police, or if fire brigade, whatever it may be. It's just that camaraderie and that just keeps you going. And it's addictive. I'm not going to lie, it is addictive. And it's hard to walk away from. And it just gives you this feeling that I don't think any other real activity I've been involved in provides. It's something very unique, and it's hard to explain.
Yeah. Well, Keaton, we're getting towards the end of our show. Do you have? What do you got? Maybe another question yet before we wrap it up?
I only have one more left anyway.
All
so
right, let's go with that.
What's next for Chris Mercer?
Well, I think everyone knows what's next for Chris Mercer. I mean, by the end of this year, Chris Mercer will be officially the leader of NIPW, and what that means is beating that stinky Steve Savage for the Resolution Heavyweight Championship. And then from there, it's just continuing being the most entertaining person in the room. And if anyone out there has any issue with that, again, we go back to the 4 words: try and stop me.
All right. Well, I tell you something, it's been fascinating, Chris, learning about you, your journey and everything, your career. It's just been a very insightful and very, very interesting interview that we've had with you.
Yeah, it has.
I know, Keaton, you keep bringing these guests in, and I'm just fascinated. I know you know Chris, but for me, it's been a lot of fun, and learning about Chris. Before we go, though, I just want to point out what we have coming up, as I always do at the end of our shows. So for NWF Wrestling, for our next Rewind show, which is going to be coming up here on next coming Thursday, we're going to be taking a look at Studio Taping 69, fully restored, July 25th. It says Dixie Dave with me, guys, but it won't be. Dave's going to be out of town. I have Jeff Dinsmore and maybe Jamie McParland coming on with me, but we'll take a look at this. Is our first outdoor taping from 1986, so we'll take a look back at this show, and that's what we got coming up next Thursday. And then on the next Kayfabe with Keaton, it's going to be Matt Moore and the Moore Army. Is what I believe his YouTube channel is. On the next Kayfabe with Keaton. Keaton, what can you tell us about Matt Moore?
So Matt Moore is a former promoter. He ran entertainment and banger called BCW, Banger Championship Wrestling, former BCW champion. He's had some really good feuds with even his brother Tony Moore, and his dad was in the middle of it. So it'll be great to talk to Matt Moore. He's now became a YouTube sensation, 63,000 followers on YouTube, and he's still a big wrestling fan to this day. I've seen him in Manchester for Money in the Bank. No, Manchester for different kind of things. London and Money in the Bank. Cardiff Wales for Clash of the Castle. So he's still a big wrestling fan. Be great to talk to him.
Well, that sounds like that's going to be a fascinating show as well. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be in a week, 2 weeks from tonight, everybody. Or tonight for you guys. Yeah, I said it right. Or if you're in the U.S. in the afternoon. So it just depends where you are watching this. But yeah, so that'll be a great one, Keaton, from the next 2 weeks. But as for this week, Chris Mercer, the Entertainer, thanks so much for joining us. If you want to follow Chris, everybody, his Instagram, his Twitter account. Well, it's not Twitter now. What is it? They call it X?
X.
There's his links. It's the same for either. You can follow him and see what he's all about. So thanks for joining us.
No, thanks very much, guys, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been great. Obviously, I know Keaton very well, but it's always good to have that wee bit more in-depth conversation. And it was great meeting you for the first time properly, Sean. And hopefully it's not the last. And maybe someday, if you're ever over these neck of the woods or we're over your way, it'd be great to meet you in person.
Oh yeah, I told Keaton. I said, something. If I could travel to Europe, I definitely want to hit up Ireland, and I'd want to be at one of these shows.
Well, we'd love to have you, 100%.
It would be great to see one in person, I gotta say. All right, well, thanks a lot, Chris, and
thank you
for Wrestling Revolution Keaton, Crusher Crossen. We will see you in 2 weeks.